When Jeff Bridges was 13 years old, he scrawled 3 words on the door of his bedroom that would stick with him for a very long time. Jeff was concealing a horrible reality, despite the fact that everyone perceived him as a Hollywood star. He became frightened just before scenes. To avoid his father, he took refuge in sheds. When he is shooting, his heart rate rises to 148 at the age of 75, which is higher than it was before his cancer treatment. He eventually made his voice heard at a major awards ceremony earlier this month. What he said surprised everyone. The narrative explains why being famous never felt right to him, and why he came close to quitting performing on multiple occasions. Jeffrey Leon Bridges was born December 4, 1949. Jeff's parents were artists, so his early years weren't filled with baby blankets and gentle lullabies. Rather, it was set noise and movie lighting. When he was just 6 months old, they took him to a movie set. It was published in January 1951, under the title The Company She Keeps. The director needed a live baby to wail in one scene. Jeff immediately started crying after Jane Greer gave him a small pinch. The scene was fantastic. His name did not appear on the studio recording. Jeff joked that his first income likely went directly toward diapers and baby milk, and that people simply called him Crying Baby. However, he was unaware that his path to Hollywood had begun before he had even spoken words. Jeff's father, Lloyd Bridges, had conflicting opinions on entertainment as he grew older. Despite his fame following the release of High Noon, he wasn't always a fan of Hollywood. He revealed something unexpected to Jeff and his older brother Beau around 1957 or 1958. According to him, the average artist earns little more than $5,000 annually. He supported it with numbers on paper. He advised them to focus in class. They have to receive scores higher than a B+ in order to be considered for acting roles. He also suggested that instead of becoming artists, they could be better off becoming engineers. That rule remained in place for years, and Jeff was deterred from pursuing fame. It led me to believe that acting might not be stable enough. When Jeff was 13, something shifted for him. He didn't wish to be only recognized as Lloyd's son. For this reason, he started drawing at the Brentwood Art Center in 1963 and scrawled, "Not an actor," on the door of his bedroom. He earned his first $35 on August 9, 1964, when he sold a canvas for $35. In addition, he played at Santa Monica fairs with a surf rock band named The Nozzles. Jeff was learning how to paint and play the guitar, while his older brother Beau was studying how to read play scripts. His high school painting prizes from 1966 are preserved in his workshop. For Jeff, this was more than a phase. There was a message. He refused to follow the simple route. He was prepared to get out and discover the real world. But there was more to Los Angeles in the 1960s than just music and art. Drugs and parties were involved. When Jeff was 16, he used marijuana before math class. He experimented with LSD at Topanga Canyon bands in the summer of 1967. One evening on September 3rd, the police stopped him. A bug was discovered in his beetle by the police. Instead of detaining him, they called his father because he was still a minor. But the family was afraid. He was required to attend treatment once a week by his mother, Dorothy Bridges. Lloyd took him to 2 rehabilitation sessions in Malibu in October of that year. Jeff claimed after the fact that he thought he would miss the live exit. It was the first thing that awakened us up. The lectures were not functioning. Lloyd made a novel attempt. During breakfast one morning in early 1968, he made a wise statement. He assured Jeff that everything could be done. You don't need to join a band or the army to paint, fly aircraft, and play music. Many life, one work. Jeff continued to ponder the thought. It didn't sound like a trap. It sounded like pleasure. Jeff soon had a modest role on his father's television program, Sea Hunt. Just to buy a new Stratocaster guitar, he did some of it. Lloyd's strategy was successful. Even though Jeff was already in, he valued the prospect of freedom greatly. However, he took his time getting a full-time job in Hollywood. On May 12, 1967, Jeff enlisted in the Coast Guard Reserve for the first time at the age of 17. For 8 years, it was a promise. It delayed his filmmaking while preventing him from participating in the Vietnam War. On the weekends, he worked midnight shifts and removed rust from buoys. Ultimately, he described it as torment. Nevertheless, he had enough time to accomplish anything during breaks thanks to the strategy. At that time, he filmed The Last Picture Show in 1971 and Thunderbolt and Lightfoot in 1974. He received 2 Oscar nominations. At the same time, he went after accolades while wearing his attire. In 1975, he ultimately left the Coast Guard. Additionally, the United States ended the draft in that year. In 1967, Jeff took a Greyhound bus to New York for the first time to study. Jeff didn't give a damn about the school's reputation for teaching tough acting. He became even more fascinated by the street art and music clubs. He brought his panorama camera along and snapped images in the subways while conversing with painters and musicians. He sneaked into the open mic sessions at Café Wa by skipping rehearsal. Before returning home, he was only there for a few months. However, even that brief period of time offered him a response to his parents' question about whether he truly intended to pursue a career in acting. Even after receiving an Oscar nomination, Jeff nearly gave up. In 1972, he hired a studio in Venice and purchased a beach house in Malibu, although not for filmmaking. Rather, he painted ocean sceneries and composed music at that time. There was no gallery objective, no record deal. Simply give him some time and space. He hinted to his father that he would skip the upcoming films. Then, suddenly, wonderful bits began to appear. The gap wasn't very long. By 1973, the entire family was anxious about his plans to resign. Their living room served as the venue for the gathering. Dorothy pulled out a notepad in which she recorded all of Jeff's interviews and employment. The focal point of the family is always her. Playing is a great way to use all of my skills at once, Lloyd informed Jeff. Dorothy added that they needed Jeff to continue rowing with them, and that everyone supported one another. Jeff had already attempted to decline, but after a few days he consented to appear in The Iceman Cometh. To try to convince him, the director went to his art area. He was thrust back into the spotlight by that small push. It was the summer of 1975 in Paradise Valley, Montana. At the age of 25, Jeff Bridges began working on the odd little comedy Rancho Deluxe. One afternoon, he noticed a woman strolling through the dining area of the Chico Hot Springs Hotel. She had a new nose and 2 black eyes, but Jeff couldn't take his eyes off her. He repeatedly lost his lines. The staff used to make jokes about his mishandled tapes. While they were filming, he invited her to supper. "No," she said. "Economics student Susan Jeston worked there to earn some money. No, maybe I'll see you around." "This is a small town," she replied. He remembered that moment. They danced together at the wrap party after 3 nights. It is simultaneously strange and sweet. They clung to it. The following morning, they visited farms along the river. A photo from that day is still in Jeff's wallet. He claims that it transports him back in time to the instant he realized he had discovered the one. In the 1976 Paramount adaptation of King Kong, he portrayed Jack Prescott. The highest amount of money ever spent on a film at the time was $24 million. Over $8 million was spent on advertisements. They promised to offer substantial compensation if it generated above $60 million globally. Despite everyone's doubts, it made $7,023,990 from 974 screens over the weekend, making it the highest December opening ever. In 10 days, it had earned over $26 million. By the end, it had reached almost $90 million. The cost of that triumph was high. For nearly 2 years, Jeff was occupied with contract negotiations, advertisements, and interviews. He made a joke about how the large animal not only snatched a girl, but also his money and wouldn't let go. Then came the year 1977. He had always had her at his side. He was deeply offended when she said, "I'm going to have kids and settle down, with or without you." Monday was the day. By Wednesday, he was wandering about their Malibu home, contemplating whether or not he would have to give up his independence if he settled down. He called his brother Bo because he was so angry. On Thursday, she accompanied him to a wild beach in Zuma. He took a turquoise ring out of his jeans and proposed to her. 5 days later, on June 5, 1977, they were married. Her Lutheran pastor's backyard served as the venue for the modest wedding. Jeff was saved by the things she said. Without them, he claimed, he could have continued to travel until everything collapsed. But he didn't drift. He reflected on his feelings about Paradise Valley. The morning following their first dance, they took a tour of a historic house close to the Yellowstone River. A voice said, "Don't let this place or this woman get away," to Jeff. In 1979, he purchased 320 acres outside of Livingston. Because he constructed a basic wooden cabin without a telephone, studios were unable to contact him. He claimed to have missed interviews to paint and fish in a 1977 New York Times story. It was detrimental to his prospects, according to his agent. In an attempt to get studios to back off, Jeff even deliberately demanded extremely high fees. They continued to send bargains in its place. "The house helped me breathe," he claimed. When the noise level in Hollywood became too high, he went there. He would spend weeks getting lost after fixing fences and lounging by the river. But family had a powerful pull. His father, Lloyd Bridges, held over 150 titles. He was previously questioned about if he ever put pressure on his children. However, Jeff claimed that declining large tasks was a waste of skill. It was painful. According to Jeff, it was painful because his father had always supported him. According to several trade magazines, such as Variety, Jeff could become renowned if he would simply stop putting things off. Jeff committed to doing something. If he could return to Montana in between scenes, he would play significant roles. He appeared in Cutter's Way in 1981. It demonstrated that he cared about acting, but not more than peace, he told his father. Then in 1981, Tron was released. He stood in front of something he didn't understand at the age of 31. Despite only using them for 15 to 20 minutes, the film had a futuristic vibe. Not even the Disney artists wanted to touch it. They feared being supplanted by machines. Because they believed that employing computers was dishonest, the Academy refused to submit it for a visual effects award. Jeff felt frightened. He even questioned the director during practice about whether computers could replace people. He wasn't acting when he had that taut, anxious expression in the film. He was terrified. Then he said that every time he saw a computer screen, Tron forced him to glance over his shoulder. In 1984, everything deteriorated. He had to portray an extraterrestrial who was learning to move like a human for Starman. He broke every habit he had, avoid slouching, bending, or blinking unintentionally. He spent 115 days gradually resembling a genuine person on TV after observing a dancer to master proper technique. It received excellent reviews. He received an Oscar nomination. But after that, he didn't feel like himself. This was merely to aid in his self-remembrance. For a year, he traveled to Santa Monica nearly every week in an attempt to find the actual Jeff. Even when things got hard, he persisted. In 1985, he and Glenn Close created Jagged Edge. The beach house sequence in the sultry film was a topic of much discussion. The tabloids carried the shots. Susan wasn't pleased. Despite Jeff's 10 years of flirting on set, this one was too much. One more part like that, and I'm done. Some jokes were hilarious to others, but not to her, according to friends, who claimed that this made dinners unpleasant. Jeff claimed after the fact that the movie nearly caused problems at home. Movies weren't the only thing that tested their marriage. In 1983 and 1984, Jeff worked alone on the set of Against All Odds in Mexico. Reporters started comparing him to Robert Redford and Paul Newman. The stress caused him to crack. He eventually acknowledged that he had been drinking excessively at the time in 2011. There were scorching nights and tequila. One magazine reporter witnessed him throw up during a conversation. According to Jeff, drinking ceased to be enjoyable at that point. His preparations began to fall apart. The Fabulous Baker Boys came on stage. Casting for the film began in early 1988. In order to play live music in case something went wrong, Jeff requested some time to learn jazz piano. At 5 a.m., he awoke. M for the classroom. He used the work of Bill Evans. He even practiced miming while enjoying some tunes. He put in a lot of effort at work. However, when the film was released on October 13, 1989, it became wildly popular. Everyone adored it, and it received excellent reviews and 2 Oscar nominations. The film further entrenched him in the Hollywood scene and further hindered his exit. Jeff chuckled after the fact and claimed that his escape strategy was the piano, but it failed one chord at a time. In the summer of 1990, Robin Williams and Jeff Bridges began collaborating on The Fisher King. With his ability to improvise take after take, often 20 at a time, Robin was truly amazing. Jeff didn't know what was going to happen. One night, Robin had a wild 3-minute tirade about medieval heroes in the midst of the Bowery. Jeff froze. There was another cue for him. He left the stage around 2:15 a.m., walked to a payphone, and made a self-call. He told her that he might have to see a therapist because he was so disturbed. Later discovered documents revealed that on July 27, 1990, the insurer covered one last-minute procedure. That was the only time in Jeff's 60 years of performing that he ever included therapy in a film. 8 years after the original film's release, The Big Lebowski debuted in theaters on March 6, 1998. It didn't generate much money initially. However, midnight shows were packed by 2002. Lines were shouted back at the screen. Jeff thought it was good. Then everything went haywire. On April 20th, 2005, a phony church known as Dudism was established. Over 600,000 persons identified as priests in just 10 years. People waited in line to beg Jeff to bless their white Russians at a Los Angeles event in 2007. The whole event worried him, he subsequently said. He claimed that the bathrobe was lovely, but other people treated him as though he lived in it. After 2008, he stopped attending Lebowski Fest. He claimed that members of the crowd even attempted to follow him into the restroom. They aspired to wisdom. When the DVD was released in 1999, his kids showed no interest in it. Haley was 14, Jessica was 16, and Isabel was 18. After supper on May 21, 1999, they handed Jeff a list by hand and noticed that all of their buddies' lockers had stickers that read, "The Dude Abides." According to the title, "Why, it's weird you're famous," they informed him that they were teased by their classmates for using profanity. Like all the other fathers, they pleaded with him to get a desk job. That memo was saved by Jeff. In a 2014 interview, he proudly displayed it. He claimed that his family members were the ones that were harshest on him. In 2000, he took a new approach. He contributed to the production of the political film The Contender. He intended to have more control over his own initiatives, but that didn't turn out to be the case. After purchasing the film, DreamWorks recut it. Gary Oldman and his producing partner were furious. The updated version allegedly conveyed a Democratic message. The headlines followed. $20 million was spent on the proposal. It only brought in $9 million. Jeff had to generally stay out of political hot water while he portrayed the president. He later said in interviews that the anxiety nearly detracted from the enjoyment of performing. He discovered how exhausting it can be to make a political film. Jeff nearly declined the role that would win him a Tony Award in 2009. Crazy Heart told the story of Bad Blake, a country music artist who was struggling. Jeff initially said no. He had had enough of portraying damaged men. For weeks, Scott Cooper, his boss, pleaded with him. It wasn't until T-Bone Burnett joined the plan that Jeff said yes. If he could perform his own tunes, he would agree. The film barely made $39 while costing $7 million to make. $5 million. It received 40 major honors. Jeff claimed that thinking about it makes him shiver. He continued to reflect on the near miss. It all changed with a single grudging yes. Something sparked when he touched the golden statue at the 2010 Oscars. He declared his affection for them. His voice cracked. Later that year, the Coen brothers asked him to play the lead role in True Grit, and Jeff turned them down 3 times. He described playing as a groovy job. The words didn't sound like they were practiced. They were real. He laughed behind closed doors that winning wouldn't get rid of the dude, knowing it was true inside. He was terrified of the role. The Coen brothers said they would not remake the 1969 film. The book was being filmed, and that made him decide. After the film was finished, he said something that shocked everyone. It was one of the worst things I had ever done to turn them down. The film received 10 Oscar bids. Critics praised his darker version of Rooster. Face your shade, though, and you might find something beautiful. In 1994, Jeff had a dream that he wanted to make a film called The Giver. He bought the rights that year because he believed that his father, Lloyd Bridges, should play the major role. But companies didn't think he would do well, claiming that teenagers wouldn't want to see a film with a man in his 60s as the main character. Jeff didn't quit, and when Harvey Weinstein finally agreed to pay for it in 2013, Jeff had grown up and assumed the role that was planned for his father. He grinned and said that waiting made him just old enough. The Giver was released on August 15, 2014, after 7,319 days, and made $12.3 million in its first weekend. For Jeff, however, it was both the end and the beginning of something new, as he had altered that copy 18 times before. But movies weren't the only thing in his life. There was a time when Jeff did something very different. He was only 34 years old and started a group called End Hunger Network. People thought he was famous, but he worked quietly to feed hungry children. He told the National Press Club in 2010 that almost 17 million kids in the US were going to bed hungry. He called this work penance because he was always moaning about problems in Hollywood while kids were going hungry. His group worked on 5 big nutrition bills over the course of 40 years. He even put out an album of relaxing music called Sleeping Tapes in 2015 and gave the $80,000 he made from it to No Kid Hungry. During promotions for movies like True Grit, he would stay behind to meet with politicians and talk about giving kids food during the summer. He joked that his Oscar wasn't very good at making soup spoons, but Jeff's quiet fight for other people didn't get him ready for what happened in October 2020. He sent out one tweet that month when he was 70 years old. He was told that he had a blood cancer called follicular non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The growth in his stomach was 9 by 12 inches. He started chemotherapy right away, believing that his fatigue and weight loss were just the result of the pandemic. He underwent 6 rounds of chemotherapy, some of which involved antibody treatment, and he kept himself cool by meditating daily. After 11 months, the growth shrank to 2 centimeters, and his doctor informed him in August 2021 that it was roughly the size of a pebble. Jeff said a month later that he was in full clinical remission, and he celebrated by walking a mile without using his oxygen tank for the first time since the treatment began. However, things worsened while they were receiving treatment, as Jeff contracted COVID in January 2021, while he was in the middle of his 4th round of chemotherapy. His defenses were already weak, and his oxygen levels dropped quickly, and he was transferred to the Santa Barbara Intensive Care Unit for 5 weeks. His lungs hurt so much that he could only stand for 45 seconds at a time. They helped him get stronger little by little. He lost 35 pounds and a lot of hair. Later, doctors said that the COVID shot he had received earlier might have saved his life. He said that getting cancer was easier than getting the virus, but it made him realize how fragile life is. While he was stuck in the COVID ward, Jeff asked a nurse to bring him 2 shoeboxes full of letters from his mother, Dorothy. One night, he read them alone and came across something that made him feel bad. His parents were married for 58 years, but they were on the verge of divorce in 1969. Lloyd had left to make a Western, and he promptly filed for divorce. Jeff was unaware of this. The letters were angry and upset, but then there was a quiet repair that started with a postcard that said, "Let's try again for the kids." Jeff and Susan had been married for 43 years when he realized the truth. He told Susan more about money, fear, and gratitude, saying those letters reset his compass to 0. However, even getting better comes with a price. Jeff's hospital bills totaled over $3 million due to chemo, the intensive care unit, and breathing therapy, which wasn't part of his plans. He had to find another job to maintain his union health insurance. So he resumed filming The Old Man, an FX thriller that had started in early 2020, but had to be put on hold when COVID occurred. Then it stopped again after he was told he had cancer, costing the studio approximately $5,000. Jeff still required an oxygen concentrator even though filming resumed in October 2021. The Old Man finally got its start on June 16, 2022, and the critics liked how exhausted and real he was on stage. It wasn't playing, it was just getting by. Jeff found it difficult to work on scenes for more than 45 seconds without getting tired, but in a strange way, the set he used to be afraid of helped pay for his recovery. Then, on April 29, 2024, Jeff wore a suit and stood on stage at Alice Tully Hall to accept the 49th Chaplin Award. But instead of giving a typical speech, he shocked everyone by saying, "I never really wanted to be an actor," he said. He related how, as a teenager, he would get panic attacks every time his father ordered him to practice. On one occasion, he spent 2 hours hiding in the garage in the hopes that his father would forget what had transpired. From a history book he read, acting is like wearing someone else's clothes. It's uncomfortable and itchy. For 6 consecutive seconds, the room was completely silent. After that, there was applause. A protracted, cacophonous cheer. Even though he is approaching the age of 75, he still feels afraid. His heart rate hit 148 beats per minute as he was creating Tron Ares in March 2025. More than you were receiving chemotherapy. At 4 a.m., he wakes up. He fears that on movie days, he won't remember how to act. He told reporters, "The fear is louder than the tumors ever were."